I'm sure all of you are wondering why we're here this morning, so I want to give you some background. Over the past few months, the Air Force has suffered several aviation-related mishaps and fatalities. Many of these have been high-profile incidents that I'm sure you probably saw in the news. They include the loss of an H-60 and all 7 crew members over Iraq, the loss of a Thunderbird pilot, the crash of an F-16 over Arizona, significant damage to 2 of our F-22s out at Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska. And finally, the most recent tragedy, the tragic loss of life of a C-130 and all 9 members aboard over Georgia. Now, the other services also are not immune to these aviation mishaps. In fact, within the Department of Defense since October, the service has lost 25 service members due to aviation-related incidents. With that in mind, General Goldfein took a look at the uptick in aviation-related mishaps, and he asked all the wing commanders to take a hard look at our processes. What are we missing? What are the seams and gaps that can break this chain of events? So I'll let you hear that directly from General Goldfein.
Fellow airmen, in light of a recent spike in aviation flight mishaps, including several incidents where we've lost our most precious asset, our airmen, Secretary Wilson and I have directed commanders with flying and maintenance functions to conduct a one-day operational safety review. Your wing leadership will facilitate focused discussions to identify gaps and seams that could lead to future mishaps or unsafe conditions.
Whenever an aircraft lifts off, there are 1,000 fingerprints all over it. From the crew chief to the avionics techs to the refuelers, wheel and tire, air traffic control, RAPCON. It takes everyone working together to generate air power.
So every one of us has a responsibility to identify, assess, and mitigate risk, even though we know that flying is not a risk-free business. So this is what I want us to focus on during the safety review.
Safety has been and always will be Commander and Senior NCO business. We are a nation at war, and we can't afford to lose a single airman or aircraft due to a mishap that could have been prevented. So let's get the most out of this safety review. As a staff, we are supporting and you are supported.
So thanks to each of you and to your families. You truly put the power in air power, and I'm proud to serve with you.
Now, after hearing that, I'm sure I've been in your seat, so I know what many of you are probably thinking. We're not an aviation wing. We don't have a flying mission. And for the most part, that would be true. Aside from the 54th Helicopter Squadron that supports us day to day, we don't have a flying mission. But I would argue that any combat unit, any operational unit can benefit from a safety review. A hard look at what we do well and where we need to improve. You see, mishaps aren't specific to aviation. And over the past year, especially being the Chief of Safety, one of the things that I've learned is that many of the mishaps that we investigate, there's not a single instance that I can point to and say that was the cause. Usually it's a chain of events. Usually it's a failure in multiple layers and sequences of events that in their totality led up to that mishap. What we're trying to do with the safety review is break that chain. Somewhere along the way, we need to look at our processes, our techniques, tactics, procedures. You know more than us where the gaps are in your duty section, in your unit, and we're asking for your help to figure those out. Now, based on the number of aviation-related mishaps that we've had and deaths, one might think that the leading cause of loss of life across the Air Force and the Department of Defense is as a result of aviation-related mishaps. But that's simply not true. The greatest cause of death across the Air Force and the Department of Defense has been and continues to be private motor vehicle accidents. And in many of those accidents, alcohol was usually a factor. I bring that up. I'd be remiss to stand here just before a long weekend with Memorial Day and not remind you guys to drink responsibly. Have a wingman, have a plan, and drink responsibly. Now, if your plan doesn't survive first contact with whatever bar you end up at over the weekend, change your plan. Call a wingman, call a friend, call a supervisor, flight chief, commander. You can even call me. And take advantage of all your resources that are out there. I want to remind you guys that Airmen Against Drunk Driving is a great resource. And if you have a smartphone, which I know all of you do, download the Team Minot app. I encourage you to do that if you haven't done so already. Aside from all the things that are great about the app, you can look in the directory, and the third listing in that directory at the top is Airmen Against Drunk Driving. Now, last year alone, the Department of Defense lost 296 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. Out of that 296, 180, or over half, were the result of private motor vehicle accidents. What's even more telling is as you look inside those numbers, over half of the private motor vehicle accidents involve motorcycles in some way or another. I mention that today because May is Motorcycle Safety Month. So let's take care of each other, look out for one another, and share the road. Now, true to form, the only Class A mishap that you see listed up there was a private motor vehicle accident where we tragically lost one of our defenders this year. And if your memories are short, for some of you, in 2017, we lost 2 members at Team Minot. Both of them were involved in off-duty motorcycle accidents. So these numbers bear out, and we've seen that, and they've held true here at Minot as well. Now, one of the greatest risks that you face on a daily basis is simply driving to, from, and through the missile complex or driving off duty. We have a unique job here and a unique mission. You have to drive an hour, hour and a half just to get to work. You can't do anything until you've driven at least that hour, an hour and a half. And then, after you've done your work and you're tired and you're at your lowest point in the day, you got to pack everything up and drive another hour, hour and a half back. Often on dirt roads that aren't well maintained, that look the same, or in harsh winter conditions. We understand those challenges. Now, most of the mishaps that we've investigated this year, it should be any surprise that we've had 5 rollovers since October here in the wing. And I can tell you that most of them were preventable in one form or another, which is why we're here today also to focus on how we can prevent mishaps before they happen rather than investigating them after the fact. Now, some interesting studies by 20th Air Force as we continue to look at this problem with rollovers specifically because of the risk it poses to all of you day to day. One of the things that we found is that speed is a factor in 64% of all rollovers. Another interesting fact, you're more likely to roll over on a clear, dry gravel road than on a snow-iced paved road. One of the reasons for this is if speed's a factor, then you're driving more than 25 miles per hour on gravel, which is the speed limit. That's one of the causes. And we know how to prevent that from happening just by complying with the speed limit. Also, as you look at these numbers, one of the things that will stand out at you is that a large majority of the rollovers do involve security forces. And that's not a knock at you. One of the things it shows is that you guys drive more in the missile complex than anybody else. In fact, as I talked about driving to and from the missile complex to do your job, some of you have to drive the entire time out in the complex. That is your job. Now, many of you, especially our security forces members, are younger. Now, one might think that the average age would be a little bit younger than 23 for the personnel involved in mishaps. But one of the things it shows is that as you get a little over a year of experience in the missile complex, you get a little bit more confident, maybe somewhat complacent. And the accidents that happen on clear, dry roads, what that tells us is that you're not paying attention as much. And if you've driven above the speed limit, especially on gravel roads, and you haven't had really anything serious happen to you over time, you begin to get complacent, and you continue to do it over and over again. We're creatures of habit. So with that in mind, In our unique mission, especially driving to and from the missile complex, I've asked Captain Eric Pederson from the North Dakota State Patrol. He's been kind enough to come up here from Bismarck this morning and this afternoon to talk to us a little bit about traffic and public safety. So I'm going to turn it over to him at this time.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I just want to tell you all I appreciate what all you do. I am the father of an airman that's actually security forces in the National Guard. He's deployed right now to El Dafra. So I do 100% appreciate what all of you do. We have a lot of interaction between the Air Force and the Highway Patrol. It was identified about a year ago that we probably didn't have as much as we should. So this fits in. One of our key priorities in the Minot area is to build our relationship with all of you. Just some stats that we've pulled together when we present this to my boss is you drive 5 times as many miles in North Dakota that we do. So if you think about that, the Highway Patrol drives 20% of what the folks in this room drive. So that's a huge stat. And I can tell you that when you look at your crashes and what happens to you, it's exactly what happens to us. We have cars upside down. We investigate them the same as the Air Force does, and complacency is our #1 issue that we run into. So this is a exact same type of conversation we have with our troopers. We did a similar thing about 2 weeks ago. We brought every trooper in and had a presentation that was a lot like this, just saying complacency in all matters kills cops. And we don't want that for ourselves, and we don't want that for you. So we're just going to go through, give you a little bit of information that's specific to Northwest North Dakota, specific to the missile field in the Minot area, just to kind of give you some situational awareness. So you've all made it through at least one Minot winter. I'd like to say that the winter is our worst road conditions, but those of you that have been in Minot in the summer can tell sometimes it can be just as bad. Storms, high wind, dust, smoke. We definitely have all 4 seasons here. I can tell you that the most dangerous times in our roads are not in the big blizzards. It's not during the ice storms. The most dangerous time on our roads statistically, especially where you live and where you work, is from now till the end of November. It's farmers, it's construction, it's recreation. So this is our time that we put extra emphasis in it. Memorial Day to Thanksgiving are the deadliest times on our highways. For those of you that aren't from North Dakota or from a rural area, we share the road with a lot of different vehicles. Farming, it is planting time. And if you looked at farm equipment in North Dakota, it's huge. We just had a permit the other day for an air seeder in this area. When folded, when it's ready for transport, it's 46 feet wide. So you're going to be sharing the road with 46-foot wide implements going up and down these same gravel roads that you're trying to get your convoys down, your single Humvees, and your patrols down. So that's not normal. You don't see that in metropolitan areas. You don't see that in a lot of rural areas. North Dakota also does not have a minimum speed. So you can drive a tractor with a 46-foot wide implement of husbandry down Highway 83 down the interstate. We're the only state in the country that doesn't regulate how slow you can go. And we also have some of the highest speed limits, which is why we have a lot of the issues that we do. Large trucks, the oil field is booming again. Just to give you some quick stats, some of our traffic counters in the Partial, Newtown area, Stanley, right in the heart of one of your fields, some of our traffic counters are up 25 to 30% over last year. And the vast majority of that is trucks. Trucks that are heavy, trucks that have a hard time stopping, and just to be brutally honest, trucks that are often driven by inexperienced first-time drivers. So the oil field, agriculture, it's very truck related. It's very high mileage, and the same things that applies for our troopers and you applies with them. Complacency, inexperience, a lot of the differences, they don't have the training level that we all do, so they're even more of kind of the X factor when it comes to danger. Oil field equipment itself, in the top right, you can see a workover rig. It's just an example. It's one of the maintenance vehicles for the oil field. The biggest area that we expect huge traffic increases is in that Partial, Newtown, Stanley area for well maintenance. So We expect by midsummer, there's going to be a fleet of about 90 to 100 of those well trucks moving every single day. That's a huge conflict for us. It's a huge conflict, traffic conflict for all of you when you're on those roads. So pay extra attention. That vehicle in the upper right, it's about 130,000 pounds. They don't stop, they don't accelerate, they don't steer. I've driven one just to see what it was like. You're going to see a ton of those out on the gravel in those areas where you're all maintaining, where you're doing patrols, and where you're doing transports. Also motorcycles. For the short driving season that we have, motorcycle injuries and fatalities are extremely overrepresented in our stats. We have, by vehicle mile traveled, we have one of the highest rates of motorcycle injury and fatalities. Why is that? It's two things. We have a lot of disposable cash in North Dakota, whether it's all of you that save up for a motorcycle or the oil field or whatever, and you have a short driving period. So people buy too big of bikes with too big of motors and don't drive it enough. Watch the news. We will average 1 or 2 serious motorcycle crashes a week all summer long. Some summers are worse than others. Crash causing violations in North Dakota, our number one, it was already referenced, our number one reason why we have injuries and fatality crashes is alcohol and drugs. We lead the nation in alcohol-related fatalities. The rest of the country, for the most part, the trend line is slowly going down. Every year there's a few less fatalities or injuries related to alcohol. We buck the trend, ours is going up. We have some lenient DUI laws. We have just some conditions, binge drinking, ruralness. North Dakota still has a culture that accepts to some level drunk driving, which makes our job kind of an uphill battle. We all know it's not right. It is the most dangerous factor for those of you off duty is riding with somebody that's been drinking and driving, or encountering that other driver that has been doing the same. Distracted driving. I know your vehicles, whether it's your maintenance vehicles, your security vehicles, they have lots of distractions in them. The biggest distracted drivers out there, honestly, are us. Computers, radars, radios, phones. That's why we had our safety stand down. We're actually going to put computer software in our computers that shuts them down at 30 miles an hour. At 30 miles an hour, our keyboards are going to quit working because we have too many reportable, preventable incidents that we've identified. Intersection crashes is our number two when it comes to priority for enforcement in this area. DUI is 1. The intersections are number 2. The intersection just south of the base here that you've all seen the speed limit change, that was as a result of the last 2 airman crashes that occurred there. That's a permanent 55 zone. That's not going to go back to 70. That's a permanent zone. We have had conversations with the tower, and I was up here a couple weeks ago. We're going to start doing pretty intensive aircraft patrols in that area between base and town. Just fair warning for everybody. Crashes overrepresented in that area. Driving complaints overrepresented in that area, and just lack of safety. So that is one of our priorities. Now Minot is going to be from here to the base. That being said, we all realize that some of the major causes of the incidents we have are not you in this room. It's the other traffic. It's the trucks. It's the transnational, the Canadian trucks coming out of Canada are one of our other factors. So we're not targeting airmen, and I don't want it to seem like we are. However, it's a safety issue for us. There's going to be some construction in the area, so you're going to see a lot of troopers. So just please act accordingly. And our last thing is speed. We do have wide open roads. Cars go fast. Just to give you an example, when I started 22 years ago, my car, maybe 120 miles an hour, max. 125 on a good day. Our SUVs that we have now, 154. Our Chargers, 157. It's too fast. We're actually probably going to govern our cars because at 157, you have no control. But that's also a 4,000-pound car. You drive one of your security vehicles or your maintenance vehicles, it's a whole different ball game. Less braking, less acceleration, much heavier. I drove one of your Humvees on your skid pad here 2 years ago, and it's lucky you have a building left because I wasn't real good at it. But it was a great experience for me just to realize what it is like driving those Humvees out on the gravel and on the ice. So I thought that was excellent training. Fort Berthold Indian Reservation, for those of you that are out in the field on that partial area, Stanley, this represents a very challenging jurisdictional area for us, and I wanted just to touch on it real briefly so you understand. Within the confines of the reservation itself, the tribe has sole jurisdiction over Native Americans. I have no jurisdiction. The tribe does very little traffic patrol, I should say. So it is statistically a very dangerous area. To kind of accentuate that, there's 11 different law enforcement agencies on the reservation. So it's not a unified message, it's not a unified effort. We patrol the reservation sparingly. We focus our patrol on those areas where you work every day. That's where you're more likely to see troopers. Also, Fort Berthold, right now, we all read about the opioid epidemic. This is the worst area in the upper Midwest. Some of the unclassified stats that we have, daily admittances for overdoses and trafficking of OxyContin, oxycodone in the tens of thousands of pills per week. So it's a very challenging area for us. Just be alert. We have great partnerships with the tribe. They struggle, obviously, with financing and just some social problems. But in that missile field, in that area, just be doubly careful because it is the lack of jurisdiction and just the social conditions make it very challenging, and it is at some level one of our most dangerous areas. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that. Other things that will apply to you. The Bakken Oilfield, you can see in the upper left, every one of those red dots represents a well, and on the right is obviously your missile field and your individual sites. They're right on the edge. One of the area that we're going to see a lot of drilling, a lot of maintenance is in that western portion of your missile field this summer going into the fall. So it could be for us with the traffic levels going up, it's kind of a perfect storm. I think it's very timely to talk to this group about it. Just be very much aware that traffic is going to go up and you're going to need to share the road with everybody because that Bakken Oilfield, when it ramps up, if you weren't here 5-6 years ago, it's crazy. We expect probably doubling or tripling of some of the rural traffic if you talk to some of the companies. So and that has direct effects, not only when you're out in the gravel, but when your Highway 23 goes to the heart of it, through Partial, through Newtown, Highway 8, some of those even paved roads that you drive every day, the traffic on them gets incredible. So please beware. We talked about this a little bit already, the Highway 83, our safety emphasis. We are going to continue doing right-of-way enforcement, speed enforcement. But with that, I don't want to make it look like we are targeting the airmen, because we're not. It's traffic safety overall, and like I said before, we do realize that it's other people that cause problems also. But we have to respond to the trend in crashes and incidents we're seeing, so you will see more and more of us in that area. For those of you that do the convoys, I can tell you that our past leadership, we kind of dropped out of assisting with convoys, and we're reversing that trend. We want to partner with you. We've had good talks with OSI. I know we've had good talks with some of you. The lieutenant that would normally be here, he's going to, if he hasn't, he's going to come with on a convoy or two, and we're really going to try to get a handle on how we can help you move all your materials around the state safely. We have 2 ex-Air Force troopers three actually in Minot now, 2 that were security forces. They've done a good job of explaining to the rest of the troopers what the convoys entail. So I can tell you most of the troopers in Minot are like me. We're not past military, and we just didn't really understand the importance of what you're hauling and the liabilities if something happened. So you will see more cooperation from us on the convoys, and we are looking for constructive criticism and feedback. If there are things we can do better, please let us know. Just some quick basic travel preparedness. We do this as part of your Right Start program. For those of you that are new to the area, our weather changes on the hour, on the day, and if you're outside, you realize that. So really plan ahead, monitor, especially in the winter, our appropriate clothing. I was driving up here in February to do one of the Right Start programs and ran across an airman that just bought a vehicle that broke down, shorts and a sweatshirt, and tennis shoes with no socks. And we visited with it. He wasn't part of this group. It was from a different wing. And I talked to him a little bit about it, and I said, do you have warm clothes when you work the flight line? Absolutely. Well, where are they? Well, I don't have them with. Well, that's very much. Your vehicle broke down. It's a good thing I came. So make sure you have appropriate clothing, off-duty also. Survival gear, I can tell you for us, we carry sleeping bags in our cars. I've got MREs if I have to spend the night. If I go someplace with my family that we're traveling through rural areas, I do the same. 21 years, I've spent 7 nights in my car overnight. It happens. So be prepared. For vehicle, if you have moved up here recently, this climate is hard on vehicles. Make sure that you have good tires. Make sure you have good windshield wipers. Your battery can take 20, 30 below. Your heater works. Your defrost works. You'd be surprised how many people get here and have never had to turn their heater on. If you're from a southern climate, your heater may have been on low, but it's never been on high for 5 months. So please make sure that all those things work prior to Halloween when you'll need it. And just some resources. If you ever have any questions, you feel free to reach out to the patrol. DOT has a very good travel information map. We feed real-time data to that map from our cars. So you'll have the most updated road conditions on that map. The Highway Patrol has a Twitter account for people like me. It's not real comfortable tweeting. I tend not to, but our boss wants us to. We have a smartphone app that updates all the road conditions also. It's a free app you can download. Our Facebook page, our website, DOT's website, the Weather Service, and the 511. I know the base does a very good job of day-to-day telling you the road conditions. And I would say, please, when you're out there, listen and just really pay attention and plan accordingly. I can't say enough about the jobs that you do. Like I said before, I do appreciate it. So that's the nuts and bolts of the briefing, unless there's any questions from the group at all.
Hey, Capt Pederson, that was great information. Really appreciate you taking the time out to do that. He's not only coming this morning, but this afternoon as well. And he had to drive out here from Bismarck to do this. Okay, in a short time, you're going to go back to your units and you're going to break up into some small groups and have some focused discussions on some of the topics that the Chief of Staff wants us to take a hard look at. What I'd ask from all of you is don't tell your leadership, don't tell us what you think we want to hear. Tell us what we need to hear. Tell us where there are shortfalls and shortcomings, the gaps and seams that General Goldfein mentioned. You, more than anyone else, knows where the next mishap's going to occur in your duty section. We're asking you to help us identify those areas where we need to improve. If it's a piece of equipment that needs to be replaced or a piece of equipment that you don't have, let us know. That's what the information that we're looking for. Now, rather than continue with slides, I thought a very beneficial aspect of having these is having someone come up and share a personal story. And since this was short notice, I'm going to share a personal story of my own. For those of you who don't know, I've been in the Air Force about 26 years, prior enlisted security forces member. And my first assignment was a security forces member at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. And back then in 1992, to see how old I am here, we didn't have safety programs like we do today. And so I showed up, having grown up in Myrtle Beach Air Force Base in South Carolina, where my father was an A-10 crew chief. I had seen snow on a few occasions, but never driven in it. And so one morning, I had just sewn on my first stripe, and I had a dentist appointment. So to take you guys back. And you know how the med group is about those no-show letters. So I did not want to be late. So a couple points I want you to take away from this. Mission plan. The other thing is, as you do your ORM, if you find yourself doing something that you probably feel you shouldn't be doing, that your instincts say is probably too risky, even if you think you're doing it for the right reasons, stop and reevaluate. And finally, I want you to remember that you're all part of the Air Force family, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. So I get out to my car this morning to make my way to a dentist appointment, and I find that it's iced over. In fact, pretty significantly. I didn't own an ice scraper. This was my first winter in Omaha, and I grew up in South Carolina. So I did what I would do in South Carolina. I grabbed my plastic CD case and I started to clear off a little bit of my windshield. Only I realized right away that it ate my plastic cover for breakfast, and I was going to be late. So I did the best I could, and I made a little peephole in the windshield itself, and I figured, you know what? The rest of it can defrost while I'm driving to the base hospital, to the dental group. I knew in the back of my mind, I thought, you know what? This may not be the smartest thing to do. But I've been driving a few years, I've never had anything happen to me. I'm going to be fine. So I pulled out onto the main road to make my way to the hospital, and suddenly I get hit. Or honestly, at the time, I didn't know if I had hit something on the front passenger side of my car. So I was a little shaken up. I'd never been in an accident before. So I get out. And by the way, Colonel Connor hadn't heard this story until just a few weeks ago, by the way. I didn't think it was something I should bring up when he called me to come down here and be the chief of safety. So I get out of my car, and I see a gentleman get out of a car as well, and he's in service dress. And he puts on a cap, and I can see the braid, so I know he's an officer. So while I'm walking towards him, I'm trying to think to myself, things are going to be okay. And I see that his Jeep Cherokee is pretty much totaled, and that my car is not going to be drivable. But as I got closer and closer, I realized it's not just an officer. It was a general officer. And he had more stars on his shoulder than I had stripes at the time. So needless to say, I started to turn a little white as I got closer to him. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the lessons I want you to learn from this. So, before I continue on with the story, I didn't mission plan. Up until that point, I didn't even know what mission planning really was. And I usually always left someplace knowing just how much time I needed to get there. And if anything happened in between that would slow me down, I was going to be late. Furthermore, it wasn't like I just showed up in Omaha. I'd been there for several months. I should have known that eventually it was going to ice and snow in Omaha. But I didn't plan ahead, and I didn't get an ice scraper. So, due to my lack of planning, I made a poor decision. I did my own self-risk assessment and felt like the risk was okay because I was doing it for the right reasons. And I went against my gut feelings and my instinct because, hey, everything has always been all right before. It's probably not going to nothing's probably going to happen to me. So, back to the story. The general looks at his car, and he looks at me and he says, "Hey, are you okay?" He said, "I'm okay," and that's the most important thing. And he turns and looks at my car and his car, and he says, "You know what? This can all be fixed. Our insurance companies are going to take care of this. The main thing is that we're okay." Then he brings me into his car while we wait for law enforcement to show up. And he calls the law enforcement desk on one of the first cell phones I'd ever seen. It was a big brick at the time. So I knew he was important because he had a cell phone. And one of the things, while we're sitting there and he's making his phone call, he says, "Airman Bristow, let's just be glad that everybody's okay and we kept this in the Air Force family." And that's meant a lot to me at the time. In fact, while he was on the phone, he had his secretary patch him into the Security Forces commander. And he says, "Hey, I've been involved in an accident with one of your airmen. It was an honest mistake. I think there's some lessons to be learned. I think he's learned a lesson today. But I don't want anything administrative to happen to this young airman. He's trying to do the right things. And our insurance company is going to take care of it. I just want you to know." Now, after that day, I never seen, his name was General Linhart. I never seen General Linhart again. A few years later, I was sad to hear that he passed away from a heart attack. Extremely sad considering the impact that he had on my career before it even really got started. So I really hadn't given that much thought. And the reason I'm continuing on with the story is you'll see here in the end. I haven't given that much thought until just about 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, as I was moving into a house in D.C. For a new assignment. And a retired Air Force colonel lived across the street from me. And as me and my wife, as you guys probably have done many times, depending on how long you've been in, you start setting up your house. You get your household goods, and you've been eating fast food for a couple of days. Probably you're likely not going to take the time to go eat something proper as you continue to try to get everything unpacked. It's a marathon. Well, this retired colonel and his wife, they come over to our house, and they say, hey, we understand, we've been there many times. And they brought us a home-cooked meal. Told us that they wanted to make sure that we got something home-cooked to eat rather than going out. And, let us know, welcome to the neighborhood, glad to have us. Let us know if there's anything we can do for you. Then a couple weeks later, the colonel sees me coming home from work. I'm checking my mail. It's the first time he sees me in uniform, and he notices my operations missile badge. He asked me, hey, is that a pocket rocket you got? At first, it took me a second to realize what he was talking about. And I said, yeah, I'm a missileer. He says, just by chance, do you ever know a General Linhart? And it caught me off guard. So I stopped and I told him, I said, well, why you ask? I didn't really know him, but here's a story. So I told him the story. It's a small Air Force you'll find throughout your career. So I tell him this story, and at the end of it, he laughs. And he says, you know what? That sounds just like General Linhart. He always cared about his people. He was one of my greatest friends. He would love to hear that story. I tell you that for one reason. I know many of you think that we're probably gathered here today because we care about safety stats, uptick in mishaps. The uptick is alarming, but that's not why we're here. We're here because of you. We're here because you're part of the Air Force family. And I didn't realize this until a few years ago. We're all going to take this uniform off at one point or another. But even when you take this uniform off, as the retired colonel showed me living across the street from me for the last few years, you're always going to be an airman. You're always going to be a wingman. You're always going to be a part of the Air Force family. So as we go back to our units and we look at our processes, we're asking you to look at them not because we care about stats, not because someone's trying to get promoted, but because we're asking you to prevent the next mishap or serious injury or death of one of our own, of one of our family members. I appreciate your time. That's all I have. Thank you.